Hey, Mr. Howard here. I think this is going to be the last one of these analysis videos that I do. I'll talk about chapters 12 and 13, which we read last time. I'm a little behind again. I have to admit that. Sorry. Life got sort of busy. I had to go into Patriot and clean up my classroom. All the teachers are going in sort of in shifts to try and get everything cleaned up before the end of the school year. And so I spent Tuesday there trying to get everything packed away and taken care of. So I really didn't respond to anything on Tuesday until I got home about 1:30 in the afternoon. Anyway, let's talk about chapters 12 and 13, and we'll do that relatively quickly. So yeah, this is what we called when we read the first chapter is called Hunter Gatherers, because Cole and Byron are going to be hunting and gathering on their other side of the mirror. In this foreign environment, they're essentially like on this camp out where they don't have supplies. But this is what we would have called in class the crossing the threshold. Now they've gone from their real world in that hero's journey cycle. You remember that paper that we did. They've gone from their real world into the other world, into the unknown world, the magical reality, whatever you want to call it. But here they are on the other side of the mirror in Fairy or Avalon or Alfheim or whatever you want to call it. And I've done some things in chapter 12 that I would like to sort of express. First, it seems pretty clear to anybody who thinks that I'm following some formula that this guy Poindexter, this elf, is going to be the mentor figure. That, hey, they met the mentor and now they're going across the... No. I think I make that pretty clear in chapter 12. Poindexter seems very appreciative that he's been saved, but then... he pops away and disappears. And they don't see him again. Because this is real life. Well, no, it's not. It's a story that I wrote. But in real life, things don't follow some sort of formulaic, easy system. And so they're sort of left on their own. And now we have sort of a role reversal. Whereas in the real world, Cole was very much the leader of the two brothers. He's older. He's not dyslexic. He's got, all these genius computer skills. When you switch over to the other side where there are no computers, where there is no real world, and you're in the wilderness, it's the brother who's the scout, who's good at thinking on his feet and working through difficult situations that sort of takes the lead, even though he's younger. And so it's sort of Byron's time to shine. And I think you get that. He ends up making a lot of important decisions, relying on his training and his knowledge base to do that. And so you can see this shift. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to come out of that chapter. Also, you see the brothers taking ownership of what they've done. Cole realizes that it's his fault, and he's willing to accept that blame. And Byron realizes that there's nothing you can do about it except move forward. And so he's trying to help them move forward. So that's chapter 12. Chapter 13 is called Hunted Gatherers, which is a play on the last title's name, Hunter Gatherers, and adds some tension. A lot of what we're doing here, too, both in chapters 12 and 13, but I would say primarily in chapter 13, is because we're in a new world, we kind of have to recycle that exposition element. Obviously, we had a real world exposition. Now we're in this new other world, and we need to inform the reader as well as the characters. It's easy to write the exposition because the characters are encountering it for the first time, and so every time they see something new, you as a reader get to experience that something new too. But chapter 13 is very much an exposition sort of a chapter because we're building this new world that they've come into, and there's lots of things that I've done to try and make that world adventurous and unique and different. The sun going around the horizon and never going up overhead, it gives it this sort of twilight feel, this Twilight Kingdom sort of an idea, which I directly stole from basically what happens in Alaska and in the far north throughout a lot of the year. The sun is sort of circling the horizon, so we've done that. There, we get these glimpses of creatures, fairies or elves, will-o'-the-wisps, a griffin, and these glimpses of creatures take what otherwise seems to be a very plain or normal world and gives it that element of adventure and fear that hopefully is going on. Chapter 13 is constructed in a very episodic fashion. I have a lot of little episodes that come at you. The first episode is the griffin episode. They're walking along the stream, and all of a sudden this griffin comes and eats a baby deer and flies off. That's to terrify you. That's to let you know that they're in a dangerous place and that they have to consider things that they hadn't considered before. I mean, they knew that because of the bar guest, but now we've got additional big, and also maybe we're planting a little foreshadowing. Maybe that griffin's going to come back. Who knows? So you want to pay attention there. And then, that was a pretty tense moment, so we need some comic relief. And so then we have this scene with a will-o'-the-wisp blinking out in this beaver swamp. And the boys joking about a bug light and what it would hit here in Fairyland. And how big a bug light you'd need to hit a griffin. So there's a moment there where you can sort of laugh and have a chuckle. And then the next episode involves their first encounter with, I guess, aside from Poindexter, intelligent life on the other side of the mirror. We run into these questionably fawns, questionably goat, goblin, centaur things. And this leads to the direct introduction of the Victorians. We knew the Victorians were on the other side. We've done some math now. We find out that they've only been there for 30 years. And so we find the Victorians, but it's not the hopeful, happy reunion that the boys were thinking about, because these Victorians are actually using skeletons to massacre native species of the island, and their flag is altered, and they're not what you would necessarily anticipate the Victorians being. But hold up, if you know your history, they are kind of what you'd expect Victorians to be. The British Victorians were very imperialistic. They conquered other nations. They wiped out other civilizations. If you want a history lesson, go and look at the British East India Company in India. Go look at what happened in South America. I mean, you can go, and I've hinted at that already. I mean, we talked about Ishlawanda and Kabul. Byron gave a presentation on those to his parents. So you can go on Wikipedia and you can look that up. That's one of the things I really hope the story does, is it gives you these little rabbit holes that you can jump down, and you can go and you can look up the history, and you can look up the books. You can read Alice in Wonderland. You can get the references. You can see what's going on. So anyway, the British are engaged in imperial activities. And at the same time, there's something else going on, another sort of historical callback. The landscape that Fairyland or Avalon or whatever you want to call it reflects is very much the American West. Now, I lived in Montana for a while, and so that's obviously a little bit of my own experience going into the book. But in that landscape, we have an imperial power massacring natives. That should harken back to a little bit of America's history as well. And so we've got these little connections that I'm leaving as an author for the readers to make with their own world and their own lives, which hopefully will make the piece more vibrant and feel more real without being overt and obvious. So there's that. They run into these skeletons, and the tension escalates again quickly. And I think we left off with them running away because one of the skeletons saw them. So we're left in this sort of, as usual, especially with modern books and the way their chapters are constructed, sort of a cliffhanger situation. So, yeah, I think that covers everything. Again, if you have questions, drop a question in the comments. I'm happy to answer it. And the book will be out this summer at some point. If you're interested in that, shoot me an email later in the summer, and I can let you know. I'm not trying to sell it on here or anything like that. But yeah, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to go over and give you chapter 14.